Welcome to our webinar, Coordinating Program Reviews, What Works, What Doesn't. My name's Amber Malinowski. I'm here at Weave, and I'm the one who's been sending you all the emails. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to a great session. Before we get started, I just wanted to cover a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording the session today, and so that'll be available later today, the link to it. If anyone is interested or you want to share it with somebody, just email me and let me know. We're also going to be doing some polls during the session today. This is a really nice way for us to get to know who's watching and what your experience is with program review at this time. So we'd love to have you participate in those. If you have questions during the session, there is a question area on the GoToMeeting control panel, and I will be moderating those for Dr. Wehlburg, so I'll read them, and if it's something I can answer for you one-on-one, I'll do that, and if it's a question for the group, we can answer those as we go if there's a lot of those, and there will be time for Q&A at the end as well, so if you don't have any questions but want to save them for the end, that's okay. And then after the questions, and this will probably be closer to the top of the hour, if any of you are interested in getting a excuse me, a quick peek at the Weave software platform, I'll be doing like just a quick 5 to 10 minute sneak peek if you want to hang around for that, and if not, that's perfectly okay too. And then at the very end, there will be a survey, and that feedback really shapes what we do. It's really short. It's just like 5 questions. So if you wouldn't mind completing that, we'd really appreciate it. It helps us decide what webinars to do next, what's useful to you. And those are all the housekeeping items, so I just would like to introduce our presenter today. Dr. Catherine Wehlburg is the Associate Provost for Institutional Effectiveness at Texas Christian University. She served as faculty in psychology and educational psychology for more than 20 years, which included serving as department chair. Dr. Wehlburg has been an outside evaluator with both the Higher Learning Commission and SACS, and has been involved as an author and editor for numerous publications, and is a very well-known presenter. I met her about 5 years ago, and I really enjoyed her positive personality and her practical approaches to all of this work. We're very grateful that she's here to share her expertise with us today. And with that, I will let her go ahead and welcome you and get started.
Well, thank you, Amber, and thank you, everyone, for coming in on this Friday afternoon or morning, depending on your time zone. But it is wonderful to be here and talk with you about the topic of academic program reviews. And before I kind of jump into this, I was sharing a little as we were preparing for this with Amber about sometimes what my response is to program reviews. I tell my staff around the office periodically that, oh, I just hate program reviews. And of course, I don't actually mean that usually, but what they are time consuming. They are most certainly difficult to plan and to organize. However, that being said, every single program review that we have done on campus has ended up providing incredible feedback to our faculty in our different programs. And I think this is actually one of the things that my office does that has the biggest impact, both short-term and long-term. So while program reviews can be very difficult to organize and to schedule and to plan, and they certainly take a great deal of not only staff time but faculty time as well in the preparation for this, I do believe that they can provide some of the best, insightful, formative information for many of our programs. So that being said, while they're not always my favorite thing to do, as soon as we do one, they are absolutely my favorite thing to do because I think it makes such a big impact on what happens. So let's start with finding out just a little bit about who is here. And so my first question, and we actually are going to have a poll with this. And my first question is really, who are you? And so you will see a poll open. And so if you could respond to the one that you think most closely fits who you are, and I think that'll give us a good way of finding out who who is here. We know that there are certainly many of you that have more than one role, that you wear the faculty hat, but you might also wear an administrator hat. You might be classified as staff, but who do you most identify with? And so we will see who is actually here. And one of the nice things about this system is when we open a poll like this, you all are going to get to see how you all as a group responded. So we'll give you another couple seconds to respond, and let's see what we've got. So, okay, so we've got a lot of people here who are in that administrative role, and that is not at all surprising given the topic. So my next question deals with another poll, and this will be the last poll that we do for a little while here. But how do you use program reviews? And so we'll go ahead and open up this poll so that we can see it again. Go through and choose what you think is probably the best answer. And obviously with many of these, it's not only a single response, but for the purpose of what we're doing here, it will be a single response. Okay, and we'll give you just a couple more seconds to respond. All right. So that gives us some really interesting information in terms of how we really do think of the uses of program reviews, how many, we're going to talk about some of the different uses in terms of doing internal program reviews or external program reviews. And what I'm going to do is talk about what we have done and where things have worked and where things haven't worked. And one of the things that I wanted to point out to all of you is that there was recently an article that was done in the Chronicle. It just came out on the 27th of February, and this article actually talks about avoiding the potholes of program review. And so you can find that article pretty easily by just looking at Chronicle if you haven't already seen it. But some of the things that are shown and discussed in this article is that if program reviews are done well, they can really lead to a healthy and productive exchange of ideas for improvement. And of course, that's the reason that most of us participate in program reviews. However, there are many potholes that go along with this, and if you've done any program reviews or participated with them in any way, you have probably experienced most of these, if not all of these. And so some of what they talk about are that there was no detailed self-study. And so the faculty within the program didn't actually do the hard work prior to the program review to really think through who they are, what they want, what they have done, what they haven't done, the kinds of things that are often in the departmental materials that are created. Other issues included bringing in reviewers who are friends of the program, and sometimes we have program reviews with very small disciplines, so that everyone knows everyone, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But we want to make sure that when program reviewers come in and they're external and they come to campus, that they are there to provide really good feedback to the program, not just to try and make the program look good. Even though many of them do make the program look good, because many of us have wonderful academic programs on our campuses. So other issues include the self-study not being written by the whole department or program. One person just kind of wrote it over a weekend, and it doesn't necessarily contain the richness that comes from a committee written report. Also, self-studies that are not current. Data points that are old, websites that are not kept up to date, and so the article also points out about not engaging all faculty. Many of our programs, and we've been involved in some of these personally, I'm quite sure, I know I have, where you have a department where not everyone is in agreement, and there are those that are not in agreement, but it's very important that they also be engaged in this program review process. Also, not providing insight into all students. The article really talks about using data from the really good students rather than all of the students. And of course, if our purpose of program review is to provide high quality, meaningful information back to the department, we want to show where we are with all of our students. Sometimes our programs might have high expectations, overly high expectations about what will happen, that they will bring in the program reviewers, and miraculously and magically they will suddenly get 3 new faculty lines and a new facility built for them. And obviously that is probably not going to happen in most instances. And then they also talked about overscheduling of reviewers' time, so that reviewers end up spending so much time talking to everybody and their brother and their dog that they don't really have a time to thoughtfully consider the information that they have read and that they are gathering while they're actually on campus. So I highly recommend this article to you as a way of kind of thinking through what could go wrong, and we'll talk more about other things that could go wrong, as well as many things that can go right as we go through. So let's think through about some of the models that are out there for program review, and just in a very broad kind of way, we can think about them as internal program reviews that uses reviewers who are on campus, who are part of the institution. External program reviews that uses reviewers who are not internal to the campus. They come from off campus in some way. And then a hybrid program that might use a combination of internal reviewers and external reviewers. When I became the director of our assessment program here at TCU, we had an internal program review process. And so we had each program review had 3 reviewers that would look at the departmental self-study. And those 3 reviewers were, 2 of them came from within the college, but obviously not within the department. And then 1 of the reviewers came from a different college outside of the home college of the department that was being reviewed. So by definition, there was no one on the review team who knew the discipline as a field. So the responses that we got back from the program reviewers were often very helpful in terms of looking at student satisfaction and faculty satisfaction, and helping the faculty maybe to think through how their program fit into the overall TCU setting and culture. But it did not have any information or feedback that was focused on curriculum or sequencing of courses or those sorts of things, because the reviewers were not from that discipline. And so that was a real issue. And so the results that we got, while they were helpful, they were not always as helpful to the actual program in terms of making changes that would impact student student learning and student success, and students who are getting into graduate programs or what have you as a result of being in that program. So internal program reviews can work, and I think that they are certainly often less expensive than having an external program review, but it's a little bit I don't think that we got as much from it as we do now that we've moved to this external program review, and we'll talk about that as we move through into the next slides. I did want to take just a moment and talk about this hybrid program review. At TCU, because we are using an external program review, we bring in 2 reviewers, and so they don't necessarily have an understanding of our institution and our culture and our mission, and so that is sometimes shows up in their reports where suggestions are made that would never work here for a variety of reasons. And so it has sometimes been mentioned that we really should move to kind of a hybrid program review where we might have 2 external reviewers and 1 person who comes from inside the institution, so that they can provide information to the external reviewers about our culture here on campus. We actually did this just a couple of weeks ago. Texas Christian University, we're in Fort Worth, Texas, and we have a very well-known, within the field, a very well-known ranch management program. And so the reviewers that we brought in had a lot of knowledge about ranches and ranch management and that process. They did not necessarily have an academic setting and an academic perspective that they brought with them. And so the faculty wanted to also include somebody who was on campus. So we brought in a faculty member from our College of Business. And so we actually did run a hybrid program review for that, and it worked quite well. And so that may be something that we try to do more of as we continue with this process of program review. So let's then talk about this external program review process. Benefits of this, and I've already alluded to some of these, is that the reviewers are from the target discipline. They come in from the field. They know what the canon is and how it's taught in many instances, and what graduate schools might be expecting. So that is very helpful and allows for departments to often get comments on curriculum, graduate preparation, those kinds of things. One of the other things that external program reviews can do is to raise the visibility of both the department and the institution. So over the last several years, we have brought in program reviewers from many, many different institutions. And as they leave campus, they often say things like, I have never been on this campus before. This is such a beautiful campus. This is such a great program. Your facilities are really wonderful. I didn't realize. And so that can be a very positive thing because external people will go back to their home campuses and they will have learned something about our own institution. And I think that can be helpful. That certainly was very helpful when I went to our administration to try and get a budget for this program and financial resources. I was able to use that as a reason to do it, that it might actually help to raise our academic profile on other campuses because we would actually bring people in and show them what we do. And so I think that's been a very positive thing. The other thing that I think is a huge benefit of bringing in external reviewers is that in their visits with people on campus, our reviewers meet with administrators, sometimes the chancellor, more often than not the provost, and often and also the dean of the college, and so that really is an opportunity for that discipline to speak to our administration in ways that our own faculty from that discipline might not be able to do. It's amazing sometimes what we hear from somebody from off campus that suddenly seems, oh, amazing. And when we hear that same thing from people on campus that may have heard that for years, it just doesn't speak as powerfully. So I think there are some real benefits to bringing in external reviewers. Some of the issues with it is, of course, it can be expensive. We're paying honorariums, we're paying travel, and it is a much more expensive process than just using people on campus. And as I mentioned, reviewers don't always understand the institutional culture, and that can be a challenge sometimes, and scheduling can be very difficult. And depending on the discipline, you have all kinds of different scheduling issues. We recently had we have a physics and astronomy program, and so we were bringing in astronomers from other universities, and we had to schedule time around their telescope time. Now, I'm a psychologist by training. I am not an astronomer, and I would never have thought about having to schedule around telescope time, but when you're in astronomy, that's very important, and that's what you do. So we have these scheduling issues. Sometimes they're disciplinary conferences that are very large, other kinds of events. As I mentioned with our ranch management program, we had to make sure it was not during the time of the Fort Worth Stock Show, because that was something that our reviewers were involved with. So scheduling can be a difficult thing to do, but in every single instance, we have been able to actually schedule these, and we brought people in. So what we do here at TCU is I notify the department or the program that they are up for program review. We have a calendar that is, it's a 6-year calendar, so that we hit every program that does not have specialized accreditation every 6 years. And we believe that if a program has specialized accreditation, in many instances, that visit is even more focused than our program review. And so I just gather the report of the department and the report of the visiting team for specialized accreditation. So we do not schedule those for departments that have specialized accreditation. But for everybody else, they are on our 6-year calendar. And so what that means is every year we're doing 4, 5, or 6 program reviews. And I give the programs the ability to determine how they want that to work. So for example, if some of our departments only have undergraduate programs, but many of them have undergraduate and graduate programs. So those are 2 separate programs. And so we allow the department to decide, do you want to do undergraduate and graduate together, or do you want to do them separately? And we have some departments that want it separately and some that want it together. So that's something that they have, our programs have the ability to have some say in that. There have been some instances where we have either delayed a program review because there might have been a lot of changeover in the department, a lot of new hiring, maybe some major retirements, and we wanted to give that department another year to kind of get things situated before they do their program review. We also have had, it's only happened once, but we asked, a program asked if they could move up their program review visit because of changes that they knew were coming, and they wanted to be able to have that program review so that it could really kind of kick off some of the changes that they were going to see, and they wanted some feedback on that. So there is some flexibility, but for the most part, I send out an email in the year prior to the actual program review. And so what the department then does is to identify potential external reviewers. And I ask them to do this in consultation with their dean. So that what I end up getting from them, from each department, is a list of individuals that they would like to have come in as an external reviewer. Some departments actually talk to them and talk to the potential reviewers and get their approval, so they only send forward 2 names. And those people have already agreed to do it. Some departments don't, and I just get a list and I ask it to be a prioritized list so that I can start at the top. So regardless of how that works, the invitation, the official invitation to participate in the program review comes from me. And my office is within the Provost office, so this becomes an institutional invitation to the program reviewer rather than one that comes officially from the department. And so they identify with their dean potential external reviewers. Now, when they are coming up with that list, I don't give them a whole lot of guidance. And part of that is that our departments are so very different that if I started putting criteria on how to choose or whom to choose, then I think that we'd have so many exceptions that it would make it very difficult. I'll share with you a little bit later what some other institutions have done in terms of saying who would qualify as an external program reviewer. But what we do is we leave it up to the department in consultation with their dean. So they identify who those people are. I invite them, and we find a time that works with the reviewer schedule and our faculty schedule, and also our provost schedule to make sure that everybody's on campus the way they need to be during the days of the visit. The department then writes a self-study, and I have a template that I provide to the departments, and I'll share that with you here in just a little bit. And so they write a self-study, and depending on the program, this can take a couple of weeks or it can take longer. I've tried to craft the template so that it doesn't actually involve a lot of new writing, new narrative that has to be created. Instead, what I hope they're able to do is pull existing pieces of information, whether maybe that's from our curriculum catalog, maybe it's from some of the information on their website, maybe it's from their assessment report that they submit, or from our institutional research office where they have the academic profile of their students or what have you. So I try to make it I try to use their time as efficiently and effectively as I can in that self-study. So they write the self-study, they send it to me, I send it out to the reviewers, I also send a copy to the dean and the provost, and they read it, and the reviewers will sometimes ask for additional information or have additional questions, perhaps about budget or comparison budgets or things like that. And then the visit occurs. The reviewers are on campus. Ours are a 3-day visit. They come in typically on a Sunday, and they leave on a Tuesday. So the bulk of the visit is done in one day on Monday, with a little bit on Sunday and a little bit on Tuesday. They go back. They write their report. They send it to me. I send it out to the department chair and the dean and the provost. And then we schedule a meeting with myself, the chair, the dean, and the provost. And this has turned out to be one of the most meaningful pieces of this entire process, because for an hour, we talk about nothing but that program with the provost and the dean. And we walk through the recommendations that the reviewers have made and the comments and suggestions that come from that. And that has become a really powerful opportunity to talk seriously about that program and that program's position within the college and within the institution as a whole. So we've had conversations certainly about budget and faculty lines, but also about facilities and different types of technology needs for the program. We've had all kinds of really important conversations that happen at this place, and I think this is truly one of the most important things that comes out of the program review. For example, we had our film digital media department have their review recently, and one of the things that came up was a real need for particular types of technology, dealing with green screens and dealing with other kinds of technology and video manipulation kinds of lab equipment that we have not done as good of a job as an institution keeping up with. And so that came up, and so changes were discussed and budget requests were discussed, and so much of that is moving forward now, because I think that our provost and the dean and the chair are all now much more so on the same page in terms of what is expected in that program, what students are going to need as in that program so that they can go off and either get a job in industry or go on to graduate school. So I think that meeting is absolutely essential. During that meeting, notes are taken, and the provost drafts a letter to the faculty that basically outlines, here's what we talked about, and here's what I said, and here's what I think. And that goes to the chair. I, of course, get a copy of it, but it goes to the chair, and in that letter there is always a request from the provost to be invited to a faculty meeting. And often that happens at the time when the faculty would regularly be meeting, and the provost and the dean and I show up, and the faculty have a chance to ask questions and to push back sometimes on requests that are not being considered at this time. And I think it makes the process a much more transformative and transparent process. And so that final meeting with the faculty is a nice way to move forward with that. So what I wanted to do then is to kind of show you some of what we have, and this is all on our website, which is www.assessment.tcu.edu, which is very creative, I know, but it does work. And there's a page on there on program review, and there's our calendar, and there is the program review guidelines that include much of this information. But we very much want the academic program review to be a collaborative process, and that is so very important, that this is not something that we want to be done to faculty or done to programs. We want to have this, that we work together on this to try and create ways to move forward that benefit our students. So we really look very hard at trying to make positive educational impact as a result of this. And so that's a philosophical approach that we have to the process of program review. So we try very hard not to make it a punitive process. While there certainly have been some times when program reviews have had outcomes that the department was not thrilled with, we want very much for it not to be a high-risk kind of activity. We want it to be formative. We don't want it to be summative. So while they're in this process, as I mentioned before, they write the self-study, and it's what we call the centerpiece of the process. I designed the template as a synthesis document, and as a way to provide the information that is needed to our external program reviewers. And if you've ever been an external program reviewer, you know you kind of walk into institutions sometimes in a blind way. You don't know what's happened. You don't know where the minefields are. You don't know what happened last year. And so while the self-study doesn't necessarily tell you all of those things, we hope that what it does is give enough information for the external reviewers to come in here and ask the right kinds of questions to find out what's going on. And so part of that is we ask departments to look at their own strengths, their own weaknesses, the challenges that they see coming up in their field and in their field here at TCU. So we try really hard, again, to make this a formative, ongoing process that occurs. So the self-study template essentially asks for things that most external reviewers would need to have. A brief history and a profile of the program. Much of that can come out of our catalogs and sometimes off of websites and things like that the departments have. A statement of mission, goals, outcomes, and assessment results, so that departments can pull what they have and go from that. Now TCU uses Weave, And so we provide Weave reports for the programs so that they can put them in the self-study, and so reviewers can see what those mission goals, outcomes, measures, and findings have been. Then there's a section on student recruitment, retention, and placement, faculty information, certainly including teaching, research, and service, the resources that department has, and then a section on summary and future plans. Now, some departments add to the template, which makes sense in a lot of ways. Again, not every department has the same sorts of things. And so some departments include additional information. We did a program review of our honors college a couple of years ago, which was larger than a single department. And so they took the self-study and they added quite a bit to it, and kind of rewrote the whole self-study, not necessarily following this template, which is completely fine with me. What I want is for them to create a document, or documents in many instances, that gives to the external program reviewers the same information that that I think I would need if I were going to walk in to a particular program review. And again, once we send out the self-study, I always include a note to our reviewers indicating that if they want additional information, then just let us know and we'll see what we can do about getting that additional information. For example, we had a program review a few years ago where the reviewers wanted to see comparison budgets. So not just the budget of the department, they wanted to see other budgets within the college to see how well that department was doing compared to other departments. And so in conversations with the dean, we were able to pull that information and provide it to the program reviewers. So let's move on to our next and final poll, actually. And this deals with, if you do program reviews, how much do you pay your reviewers? So we'll go ahead and open that poll, and you get to choose. And this is not what you would like it to be, but what you actually are paying your reviewers. And then I'll share with you what we do here at TCU.
There was a quick question. Is the poll referencing external reviewers only?
No, if you pay your internal reviewers, let's go ahead and just include that as well.
Okay.
That's a great question. And actually, when we did that recent hybrid one, we paid our internal reviewer the same thing we were paying our external reviewers. I felt like they were putting in the same amount of time, and they should receive the same amount. So we've got a few more seconds to fill out the poll, and then we'll see. We'll see how close TCU is to our very representative sample, which is people coming to this particular webinar. So, okay, so several of you, 39%, don't have reviewers, and it looks like 12% are paying up to $2,000, and I really didn't put anything on there if you were paying higher than that. I've never heard of somebody paying more than $2,000 for a program review, but that would have been interesting to see. So reviewers and what we pay reviewers is certainly part of this overall process. So here's what we do at TCU and how we pay them at TCU. So each program review, when I budget for it, each program review costs about $6,000. We pay each of our 2 program reviewers a $2,000 honorarium, and that obviously includes the work that they do prior to coming to campus in terms of reading the self-study and the conferencing that they may do with each other before they come on campus. and then the time on campus, and then the writing of the report afterwards. So we pay each of them about $2,000. And then I estimate travel and food costs at about $1,000 for each of the reviewers. So what that does is that that gives us approximately a $6,000 program review budget. Now, obviously, this varies. The honorarium doesn't vary, but travel and food costs vary pretty dramatically. I tell my departments that we will cover every cost because I don't want the departments to have to cover this. I think this is something that the provost office covers. So sometimes we have travel and food costs that end up being less than that, and sometimes we find that it is more than that. And so we, but in general, I'm budgeting around $6,000 per program review. I will also tell you that I think the $2,000, and as our poll certainly showed, that's probably at the higher end of what is paid. And I will also say that I have never had a reviewer say no, they won't do it. I don't think that's just because of the honorarium, but I think this is an incredibly valuable thing that people are doing to be able to provide this type of feedback, and I think the university should recognize it as such. So that's our costs in general with that. So here's what I hope are helpful parts of this webinar to kind of see what we have done that seems to work, and ways that we make things work. I feel that sometimes my role is a coordinator. So I help to coordinate the visit. I think it's very important that happens from the institution rather than by the department. The department isn't just bringing in 2 consultants to give them feedback. The university is bringing in program reviewers to give an evaluation of that program, even though I want it to be a formative evaluation. So I make it a point of being the official inviter by my emails, and then when we actually have the program review, the first visit that happens on that Monday, I open that meeting with an official charge to the program reviewers, even though I'm not actually part of much of the conversations that happen during that day. I make it a point that I'm there at the opening meeting and the closing meeting, and try to make it so that it is something that is run by the university. I ask the reviewers to get their completed report in within 2 to 3 weeks after the visit. I have never had a report come in late. I've never had a report really go much further than 2 weeks or so. The reviewers that we bring in, they tend to want to have the review done because then they're finished with that project. It's also very helpful to our faculty and our departments to have that review come in relatively quickly. Now, I am a behavioral psychologist by training, and so I don't send out the honorariums until I get the review. So that's their reward, or in RAT terminology, that's their pellet that they're going to get when they submit it. And again, I've never had any issue with this, and I don't think that I would have. The people that we bring in are usually incredibly wonderful and would certainly never take advantage of the university like that. But I don't send out the honorariums until I get the review in. I am the one that schedules the follow-up meeting after we get the report back with the provost, the dean, and the department chair. That way I make sure it happens. And again, I open that meeting as well, so that it is something that is run out of institutional effectiveness, which is certainly a part of the provost office, but it is something that we're doing from the perspective of institutional effectiveness. And then I help to make sure that follow-up meeting with the faculty happens. So the provost asks them to invite him to that follow-up meeting, and I follow up behind just to make sure that it actually does happen, and that we can make that work. I also then try and work with the department to link the recommendations from the reviewers to their assessment plan or their strategic plan, so that it's not just something that comes in and they get a new budget line or they don't get a new budget line and they move on, but that no matter what it is that is said, if the department and the provost and the dean are all on the same page with that, that it actually happens. So I try to do that so that we can continue the process and make sure that it does happen. So what I wanted to do now is just share with you, and I know there's way too many words on this slide, but I just wanted to share with you some other institutional approaches to this. So Oregon State University actually has guidelines for identifying external reviewers. And they are relatively specific about that in terms of the professional activities of the reviewers that are coming in, their background, those kinds of things. And so I think that is certainly a resource for you to look at. I have shared this with my own faculty when they're not quite sure who they want to bring in, that, well, here's one way to think about it, but I don't actually require it, and I don't ask my faculty to give me a rationale for who they want to bring in. I figure if they agree and their dean agrees, then they know more about that field than I do, and I take their judgment is absolutely fine with me. But there are ways that could be done differently, where faculty would or departments would provide some kind of a rationale with that. So I think that is an option. And so Oregon State University goes on to also say that they should avoid former mentors or close personal friends of faculty members, former employees, or people who have applied or are likely to apply for a position. And of course, some of that is very obvious as to why that would be. Again, I don't put that on my faculty in many instances, because sometimes bringing in former mentors or friends is almost necessary, given that it is a small field. So again, we've never had an issue or a problem with that, and I think that the conversations between the faculty as a department and the dean help to avoid any issues that there might actually be with conflicts of interest or those kinds of issues that are obviously part of the reasoning behind this aspect of identifying external reviewers. So I did want to share that with you, because I think these are some really good thoughts that can be used in creating that process. I will also be very happy to share with you all the PowerPoint slides. I know that this is being recorded, but sometimes just having the PowerPoint slides so that you can click on these, some of these are live links and you can see them and you can use that. So you will have access to the PowerPoint if you would like to use it. This is the audit and review options for program reviews from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And essentially, this is what is given to the reviewers as a result. Much like when you review for a journal article, you're asked, is it published immediately or changes or absolutely rejected. This is kind of the same sort of setup that it appears that they share with their reviewers, that they might recommend continuation without qualification, continuation of the program with minor concerns, and it goes all the way down to actually recommending non-continuation of the academic program. Now, as I've described, we don't use this here at TCU. What I ask the program reviewers to do is to give us strengths, weaknesses, and recommendations. And that is all that I give them as a template. I used to actually have a much more inclusive and longer template, and I will tell you on a personal note, it was beautiful, absolutely wonderful, included everything, and not a single reviewer wanted to use it. So I stopped sharing that with them, because obviously what I think is a good template is not what they do. And so I just ask for strengths and weaknesses and recommendations. So the review reports that we get in usually tend to be around 10 to 12 pages with those kinds of things. And again, it's been it's worked really well and been very helpful. So essentially, I try very hard to make the process not a punitive process for our departments. I'm not sure that anyone actually looks forward to having this program review within their area, but the responses and the feedback that I've gotten from faculty who have gone through this have been that it was worth the time and effort that it took, and I think that is high praise, and about as high a praise as I'm going to get for something that we're doing out of my office. So I don't want it to be a punitive process. I want it to be formative evaluation, and I want that evaluation to come from people that the faculty believe are experts in the field, because I think that's the only way that they're actually going to be able to use the results for growth and for the improvement of learning for their students. And so I think having the department in consultation with the dean developing the list of the reviewers is an absolutely essential part to all of this, so that when they bring people in, they're people that they trust. And so when those people give them feedback, it's feedback they hear and can really use. And I think that's crucial. It also, as I mentioned before, gives the department kind of face time with the dean and the provost. And so they're able to say things either through the reviewers, or the reviewers bring a perspective that is a disciplinary perspective that may not be something that our provost or the dean is aware of. So I think that's helpful. And then that final meeting where we have just with the dean, the provost, the chair, and myself, again, that's an hour of time just talking about the department and what the department does well and what the department needs in order to do better. And so I think that becomes a really crucial piece of having this all work. So lessons learned for me. I always make a point of telling the reviewers in some form that the department is not in trouble. We are not bringing them in to find fault necessarily. Now, if there's fault to be found, certainly we want to give them every opportunity to share that, because we want to improve. But the department is not in trouble, and we're not looking to cut the department or close the department in any way. And here at TCU, we have not had to do that. And so that's something that we can, again, make this a more formative process. I do ask the reviewers to look for strengths and weaknesses, and to make sure that they are honest and legitimate, and then to make recommendations based on those things, based on what they know about our institution, what they know about the field, how the field might be changing, those kinds of things. And then, of course, I want to make sure that the department feels that this program review is done with them rather than to them. So it's something that we actually do all together. And I think that in the last, I guess it's been about 8 or 9 years that we've been doing the external program reviews, I think that is the feeling of departments that have gone through this. It is something that they have an opportunity to do. They may not be thrilled about it yet being 6 years really already passed. Yes, time to do it again. But I think that it is something that they are able to really use in meaningful ways. So on the whole, I do think that the program review process makes a difference. And while it can be difficult to schedule and time-consuming and certainly an expensive process, I think that the results that we have gotten program by program have been worth the time, worth the energy of myself certainly, and of our faculty that do this. And I think it's been a really, really good process. And I certainly plan on continuing it here at TCU, and I'm always happy to see it at other institutions. So at this point, we've got a couple of minutes. And Amber, I don't know if there were any questions that seemed to come in that were something we could answer.
Yes, there's actually quite a few really good ones. So the first one from Leslie: how much information from the external review team visit is shared with the faculty?
Everything. Everything that comes in the written report. So the faculty, through their chair, do get a copy of the report from reviewers. If there were personal comments that were made or particular issues that were made that don't show up in the report, I don't necessarily share them directly with the faculty, but that doesn't typically happen. So we try and make it as transparent as possible so that the review team report goes to the chair, who then shares it with the faculty.
And this is kind of a follow-up question from a different person. Were there any issues sharing budgets from other departments with the reviewers?
Well, and when that question came in, I punted, and I basically called up the dean and said, hey, they're coming in to review the biology department. They also want to see the chemistry department budget and several others. Are you willing to share that? And I figured whatever the dean said, that I would go with that. And if the dean said no, I would tell the reviewers, I'm so sorry, but we're not going to share that. The dean said, sure, here they are. And so they weren't detailed budgets, but they were enough of a budget to be able to see how well the department was fitting into the overall plan. Mm-hmm. We also included in that the numbers of students in majors and minors, so that they could also kind of look at that and see where the differences were. Mm-hmm. So on that, I just decided that I would let the dean make that decision.
This one's a little bit different topic. When does the meeting with the provost occur? After the external reviewer has written a report, and this is about a month or so after the on-campus review, correct?
That's right. So after we get the report in, then we go through the process of the very difficult process, the amazingly difficult process of trying to schedule time between the provost, the dean, the chair, and myself. And we do it as quickly as possible. Sometimes it's a couple weeks after we get the report back, depending on everybody's schedule.
What % of your programs do have specialized accreditation?
That is a great question. Off the top of my head, I'm gonna guesstimate, because I'm going to guesstimate probably around 30 to 40% of our departments have some type of specialized accreditation, and I can look and get a better number on that. But part of the issue is that sometimes specialized accreditation does not deal with the entire department, only one particular program within the department. So it's we've got a list of specialized accreditors, but that doesn't necessarily correspond exactly to the list of departments, but rather programs in some instances. But it is certainly more than half of our programs don't have specialized accreditation.
Okay. Do your reviewers come to campus 2 times, once for the review and once for the follow-up?
No, they are here on campus for a total of 3 days, and that is it. Okay. So we have the opening meeting on usually that Monday, and then we have our closing meeting on that Tuesday. And I ask them to give kind of an overview of what they found. While we don't, hold them to it, it just kind of gives a, here's basically what we saw as your strengths and your weaknesses, and here's what we're thinking about in terms of making recommendations. Sometimes at that closing meetings, some clarification can happen or some additional questions can be asked. And then the reviewers write their report and they send it to me as an email attachment, and their job is done. So they don't come back to campus for any of the follow-ups.
Okay. How do you link the program review recommendations to program assessment, even if the recommendations may not directly be linked to the stated learning outcomes?
And the answer to that is not very well, because a lot of that gets left into the hands of the department. And so the way we run assessment planning here is that departments have full and complete control of which learning outcomes they want to identify and which ones they want to measure, even though they're supposed to measure all of them over a particular time frame, but it might be multiple years. So I don't have any kind of way to require that everything shows up later in in their learning outcomes or their strategic planning or anything like that, but it certainly becomes part of the conversation that I continue to have with that department. And so many of them do show up in some form in outcomes or in strategic planning that eventually does show up in some type of learning outcome or process. A lot of times the reviewer comments are less about, well, students should be learning this and not that, or what have you, and more about process, about sequencing of courses. Sometimes reviewers have even talked about leadership within a department, or faculty scholarship, other kinds of things that wouldn't necessarily show up in the student learning outcome part of the assessment plans. So that's why I say sometimes it shows up in strategic planning instead. And sometimes things have dropped and have not continued. And I think we can all do a better job of trying to follow up on the things that really do need to be followed up on and continued, so that there's some kind of accountability, even if it's an informal type of accountability. So I think we could do a better job with that.
There are actually about a dozen more questions, but I know we're out of time. Would you be okay if I sent these to you, Dr. Wehlburg, and followed up with just some of them are really good.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. And I think that, I hope most people have my email address. I think it was on the first page of the slides. And so if you didn't submit a question and you still have one, I'd be more than happy to have you send it to me by email. We can have further discussions on that. And yes, I'd be happy to answer any of those.
Yeah, there's a bunch of really good ones here. We could probably talk for another hour. Well, thank you so much. That was very helpful. You obviously generated a lot of questions and conversations, and we've been hearing a lot about this, I think, not just here at Weave, but I've also seen it on listservs, and we've been getting questions from other colleagues and people we work with about program reviews. This is definitely a hot topic, and thank you so much for sharing all the good work that you're doing with everybody here. We really appreciate it, and thank you everybody for coming. We really are glad that you were here and you all stuck in for the full hour too. I'm really impressed. I know it can be hard to carve out an hour. So thank you so much for that. If anybody would like to stick around for about 5 to 10 minutes, I am going to just do a really brief peek into the Weave software system. Dr. Wehlburg, was there anything else you wanted to say before I do that?
No, not at all. Just thanks to everyone for participating. And thank you for asking me, Amber. I do appreciate that.
I like to listen to you talk. What can I say? Thank you so much. Okay, sometimes when I